their department level incentive points have been historically managed differently or separately compared to the incentive points of those within their departments. So that way, they do not create a conflict of interest as such, as might arise in case of CCs. I hope that was clear, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Like they're not coordinating with companies directly, so they do not have the power. What's wrong in having a little conflict? Which conflict are we referring to in specific? Somebody asked the question. Yeah, Sankal. Okay. I mean, what's wrong with having a little conflict? It's any amount of conflict is fun. It's all good drama. But then, as placement cell, we need to be very judicious. We should not be giving out an image that you can just become a company coordinator and start influencing things. Right? That is not the right course of action. And uh, irrespective of whatever post you hold within the placement cell, it is always made very clear to you that you have worked significantly for the placement cell, but this does not give you any illicit advantage over any other student who has worked equally hard for placement as you might have. I hope that was clear. APCs are pre-final year students, right? So that is one of the reasons why internship coordinators and associate placement coordinators are pre-final year students, since they are not sitting for their own placements. So that way, the conflict of interest is much more minimized. And furthermore, there are a lot of safeguards, a lot of data logs that cannot be tampered with, that you can verify that APCs work with, to ensure that no tampering of data has been done to advantage any one individual over the others. Right. Okay, there are a few other questions. Can you please repeat the count and division of incentive points? Sure, we will do that. Somebody please remind me at the end of the groundwork to cover the ICTs and IITs and the division. The next question is, if any of the CC is an RA student, is he or she also transferred? Okay, so CCs are not second year students; they are final year students. So in case an RA actually decides to become a CC, then in that case it would be a third year student, right? Similar to that, even a second year RA student is eligible to go for APC positions. So some of you might be second year RAs, right? So rather than first or second year, it is more about final and pre-final year. So in case of bachelor's, that would translate into third and fourth year. In case of MTech PA or MSc PA or whatever, it would translate to first and second year. In case of RA, it will translate to second and third year. I hope that clarified the route. Okay, so let's just get back to the JAF follow-up team. So JAF follow-up team we will be covering a little later, since we'll also go in detail on how JAFs are basically managed. So basically for now, once a lot of companies start coming to the APCs in phase one, so transition happens in three phases. We'll go in detail what exactly those phases are. So in phase one, around 5 to 10 companies might come to you. In phase two, further 20 to 30 companies come to you. In phase three, it's around 100 to 200 companies that can come to you per CC. And given that there are 45 CCs and just 17 APCs, so there's a ratio of about 2 to 2.5 CCs transition their company to an APC. So that means around 10 to 20 companies in phase one, around 60-ish companies in phase two of the transition, and around 200 to 300 companies in phase three of the transition. So that becomes a very difficult task to manage all of a sudden, alongside managing the task of these specific sub teams also. So JAF teams work basically is to ensure that they so basically you have four members over here. So they will be dividing all of the APC team amongst themselves, and they will be taking follow-ups from these APCs, trying to ensure that no JAF is left behind and no progress that could have been made on any particular JAF is left out. So, for example, I might have been talking to a particular company, and they might have said that they will be filling a JAF on Friday. It is already the next Monday, and I have also forgotten, the company has also forgotten. So it is the job of that particular JAF team member who is allotted to that APC, such that they will remind them that this progress had to happen on Friday. As per the last follow-up, you informed me that it would happen on Friday. It has not happened, so you should do it now. Furthermore, just a second. Furthermore, JAF team also has this added task that they look for potential recruiters that might be interested in coming to IT Bombay. One of which way is basically to look around recruiters that come to other reputed campuses, like let's say other IITs or BITS or any other campuses that are relevant in this particular case, which are coming to those campuses and which are companies which are not coming to IT Bombay. So that might be potentially recruiters that might not know about us or might not have been contacted by us. So in that case, JAF team members can also assign APCs those particular companies, such that we can at least try to boost up the number of placements and the number of recruiters, so as to give students a greater diversity of recruitments. Yeah, somebody has raised their hand.
How do they know about these jobs that are opening in other IITs and all? Like, how do they get this information?
Once you start working in the placement cell, that's usually when you will be made aware of how this thing happens.
Okay,
Yeah. So now until JAV follow-up, mostly the teams that were being made were around pre-placement or preparatory activities. Now, the teams that are made around the fourth week of October, that's usually when things start to get real. So these, most of these teams that are being made after this point of time will be directly managing some or the other thing that happens during the interview. So you guys, as I've already discussed several times, interviews happen from 1st to 15th of December. But then again, it requires a lot of planning also. So one of the two major teams that are formed around this time is Skynet team, the second one being logistics, of course. So Skynet team, basically, you guys might be aware that there's this software called Skynet. In case you guys are not aware, so Skynet is basically an interview scheduling software on which we basically collect a lot of data, we clean that data, and we just put it out on the software to schedule things in such a way that there are no clashes. So, for example, let's say in at day 7, day 8, there might be a lot of companies coming for various kinds of profiles. So there's not a lot of overlapping of shortlist that we expect. So let's say a student might have a shortlist in 1 to 2 places, and then they can do those interviews one after the other or at a gap. It's not that big of a concern, given how relaxed the schedule usually gets by day 7, day 8. But if you go, let's say around day 1 to 4, things are hyper competitive. There are multiple shortlists, right? And then there's also a lot of companies coming for similar profiles. So once companies are coming from for similar profiles, there would obviously be a greater shortlist overlapping also for interviews. So because of that, we have to use Skynet software such that there is an unbiased scheduling, first of all, and secondly, there is a clashless scheduling, such that let's say if I am a student who has 5 shortlists, and believe me, it's a very modest number. There are people who have had way more shortlists than these. Not way more, but yeah, there are people who might have 6, 7, 8 shortlists within a single slot, and there are multiple people like that. So for those people, trying to ensure that they give interview everywhere, it becomes a very big headache if you have to schedule things on your own. So Skynet tries to ensure that your interviews and everyone else's interviews within the shortlist are scheduled in such a way that no two interviews that I have will be clashing with one another. So let's say if I have 4 interviews within a schedule, and let's say the schedule is of 4 hours, then I can have an interview in R1, then another interview might be at R2, then another might be at R5 and R8, let's say. So that means I can give all those 4 interviews, but that would not have been possible if the scheduling was completely random, in which case it might have been possible that the fourth interview at R8 might have clashed with the R5 interview had the scheduling happened in a completely random way, which would have meant that I might have lost the chance to appear in one of the 4 companies that I was shortlisted in, which is something that we do not want which we do not want to happen to any particular student. So there are a lot of levels at which Skynet software is managed. So first level is the higher level, which is usually at hands of Skynet team only, which includes generating the schedule of the entire slot. Let's say you guys are aware of what slots are, right? Are you guys not aware of what slots are?
Yes, we are
slot
aware. Like
1.1, 1.2.
Right. So just in case some of you might not be aware, day 1 to day 4 have 2 slots, and after that, each and every day has 1 slot. So companies are given those 8-hour durations within which they can conduct their interviews. So within any particular slot, mostly schedules are generated for 1 slot only. As for example, if I have a slot for 1.1 and the other slot is 1.2, it doesn't really matter how many shortlists I as a student might have in 2 slots combined. It is more important that how many shortlists I have in slot 1.1 and how many I have in 1.2. Based on that, the scheduling will be done. Right. So schedules are generated for each and every specific slot. So the schedule generation for the whole slot is something that can be done at the admin level, which is your Skynet team. After that, given that a lot of data needs to be input, like for example, let's say um, if I had an interview at R1 in any particular slot and the other interview is at R2, so in that case, it would be much greater help if the IC or the APC who is managing the company where I have been scheduled at R2, if they are also aware of my status with the R1 company. So in that case, what happens, we will also be having an in-depth groundwork for each and every one of these teams, in fact. So what would be happening? I When I go in, the person who is managing that company, in this case, the INC or the APC, they can just put in the data that I have gone in for an interview, and then it will be registered with the timestamp. So the other person who is managing, let's say, at a completely different floor, they are automatically made aware that okay, let's say at R1 5 minutes I have gone in, and right now it might be 1:40. So I have already been in that interview for 35 minutes, so I might be coming out soon. So let's say if I have been scheduled third in the company in the second company, and already this 2 people have gone in for the interview, then the person who is managing those interviews need not be anxious that I may not come. There's a high chance that I will come. In any case, they will be a standby person, but they have a better understanding that I'm likely to come sooner, so they can schedule me right ahead. So that way, things stick to the schedule. So for this kind of a coordination to be happening during the interview process, ICs, to some extent, even sometimes, not all the times, INCs and definitely APCs need to be aware of how the software works. Sometimes ICs and APCs need to completely trash any one company schedule and need to regenerate it. So that is also something that they need to be aware of. Or sometimes Skynet might hang in a certain capacity, and they might have to take things offline to some extent. So how things are done in that particular case. So those are things that they need to be prepared for by the Skynet team only through subsequent sessions that are taken. So there are about 3 to 4 sessions that are taken for APCs to make them aware of how Skynet is managed. In case of ICs, there are about 6 to 7 sessions. INCs usually are not taught about how uh, Skynet is managed, but sometimes if some INC is doing work really well, they can also be managing this thing. Then once IPT members are made aware of how Skynet is to be managed, then even students who have to use Skynet, they can be made aware of how exactly Skynet is used. Of course, students won't be managing schedules and everything. All they are going to see is when I have a schedule in company one, when I have a schedule in company two, right? When the interview is scheduled. So they just need to be made aware of how interface works. So that is a much less of a significant task. And then obviously the third task is to manage the schedule. So that's mostly what Skynet team does. Now, okay, what may be the reason that Skynet is not working well in last year's placements? So, Skynet itself, managing Skynet during a slot is an extremely dynamic process. Like, we do generate schedules and it helps getting the slot started. But as soon as the slot starts, there are two members of Skynet team, usually, ideally speaking, who are always on the runaround because it let's just say some companies interview process might be delayed to some extent. Some companies interview process might have been put on hold at a time when it was not expected to be. So these can lead to cascading effects. I'm sorry. Yeah, these can lead to cascading effects on schedules of other companies also. So yeah, so because of that, sometimes Skynet schedules can lag. Also, sometimes there can be a lot of load or there might be data cleaning errors on the Skynet software, which can lead to Skynet not working very well. Right. So all of these things, there can be a multiple number of uh, reasons because of which Skynet might not work very well. Sometimes it's just that the IC or the INC laptop is malfunctioning, so that caused a delay, and now it is cascading through all the companies. Right. So there are multiple reasons why Skynet might not work well. In fact, we try to we almost know that after 1 hour, Skynet would not be working well because of these cascading effects. So we have to ensure smooth working on the of the interview process, even if Skynet itself is not working as well as it might have at the first hour. But still, it becomes a very important tool given that it manages the interviews in a very unbiased way and in a clashless way. So even if Skynet might not be working as well, it still gives us a great deal of clarity, even at the seventh and eighth hour, of who do I have to call, when do I have to call them, right? If I am the IC or the APC managing the company. I hope that clarified that out. Vishal, did that clarify that out? All right, cool. So now we will move on to the second team, so to say, which is the logistics team. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to state what logistics team does. It literally manages the logistics during the interview process. And while it might sound like a very simple thing, but managing the venue, managing all the infrastructure within the venue, that can include to some extent food on the venue, then furniture on the venue, online and offline infrastructure. Online infrastructure might include routers on the venue, right? Managing all kinds of stationary supplies on the venue, managing drinking water on the venue. All of these things, while happening at a scale as big as the placements, become a significant concern. Like, for example, how many slots do you guys think are there? Any of you can write in the comment box.
Like for
How many slots?
first 4 to 5 days, we got two slots, like from
Yeah,
morning 7 to 1. Oh, sorry, morning 7 to 3, and then 5 to 1.
right. So on the first 4 days, we have two slots, and then usually 15 to 16 days is the duration of the placement season. So the total number of slots comes out to be around 19 to 20. And we can expect an average of around 15 companies on each and every one of these slots. And given that each and every one of these companies will bring on an average of at least 3 to 4 panels, so we can expect 19 slots, 19 into 5, that is 95. Uh, sorry, 19 into 15. Can anyone answer how much that is? The usual number of recruiters, maybe in a season?
Approximately 285, 290.
285. It is
Roughly around
285.
300, let's say 300 to 350 recruiters come every year. So let's just go with the ball figure of 300. And on an average, if we take just, let's say, 5 or 6 panels for each company, let's take 5 panels for each company. That means 1500 panels will be sitting for the interview throughout those 15 days. If I make the tiniest decision that I'm going to give one pen to every one of them, right? So that means 1500 into, let's say the price of a pen is 10 rupees. 1500 is into 10 is the price that I pay for that tiniest decision, which is 15,000 rupees. Now you imagine that the scale at which we're talking about is arranging routers for the whole venue, or arranging the furniture for the whole venue, arranging signages. Signages are not just for the venue, but even for the recruiters, which starts from the entrance. So there will be signages from the entrance. Sometimes there will be signages from the hostels themselves. There's a lot of movement that happens within the placement team during these days. So there's a lot of vehicles also required. So all of these things are managed by the logistics team. Now we come to the mail team. Mail team we will cover alongside the offer letter tree, given that there's a lot of overlap between these two teams. So mail team, briefly, I'll just say it's also is the second follow-up team. So one of the reasons why you need to make the mail team is because if you see, even for the APCs, their own uh, end semesters are about to come. Plus, at the same time, this is the time when a lot of company tests are happening, a lot of negotiations are happening. So, amidst all of these things that are happening, plus, of course, each and every one of these APCs have their own teams, of which I am telling you the work. So, amidst a lot of these things, several things can slip out. Which we have, of course, discussed. JAF progress is something that can slip out. Mail, again, is one of those boring, more bureaucratic things that can slip out. And I might miss some mail, which might lead to people, me missing out on a lot of recruiters. So, mail follow-up team will be managing mails not just within my inbox. I mean, they won't be managing things within my inbox, but they will see that I have any particular mail. Let's say Microsoft is the company that was allotted to me, and they sent a mail giving me the test shortlist. They already conducted the test. Now we have a test shortlist, and I have not responded to that mail. So it is a job of mail follow-up team that they will remind me that okay, you need to get back to them and negotiate with them on the test shortlist if necessary. If not necessary, then you need to post that on the placement blog, right? So that is something mail follow-up team does. Another thing that mail follow-up team does is that if you go through the placements hell ID, there we all have our specific folders. So we won't be going into very much detail, but the companies that I will be handling, their mails will directly come to my folder. But then let's say if I'm getting 10, 15 mails in my folder every day, along with all of this work, then I won't be looking around at the global inbox, right? And global inbox is one place where let's say I'm an XYZ company who has nothing to do with IT Bombay, but I want to come to hire. So I will just go on and maybe do a Google search and try to find what is the ID of the placement cell, which is placementcell@itb.in, which is the ID that all of the APCs, CCs, and all use. But given that I am managing my own mails and a lot of these other things, I will not be looking around at the global inbox, right? Where any new company is likely to drop in their mail. So this is also where the mail follow-up team comes in, where they will try to see who has lesser companies or who has less workload, and they will subsequently allot that new company to them. Now, let's see the IDC. So I hope this is not getting too long for you guys, right? We are almost reaching the end of it now. It's not too long, right? People are sleeping.
Actually, it's interesting.
I hope it's interesting for other people as well. So at least one person is there. Okay, let's try to
Yeah,
wrap it up a little faster. Okay, so then we have the IDC. Anyone can tell me what is the full form of IDC? Anyone? Right, that is Industrial Design Center. So in the beginning, I told that there are 34 departments and 6 centers. So centers, amongst these centers also, IDC is somewhat special in the way that most of the centers are around engineering or BS, BTech, MTech, MS, MSR, all of those things. But BDes, MDes, which is Masters in Design, Bachelors in Design, it's a very unique thing given how subjective it is. So a lot of the placement processes that we have discussed so far, ITC placements cannot work in that particular way, given how subjective their design processes, how subjective their whole selection criteria is. So, because of that, within the placement cell, there is a specific team amongst placement coordinators, associate placement coordinators, as well as amongst internship coordinators and company coordinators. Okay, thank you very much. So amongst company coordinators, internship coordinators, as well as associate placement coordinators, there are specific IDC, CCs, APCs, and ICs which manage placements for the IDC. So some of you might be aware that in any design process, there's no right way. There are multiple approaches that I can take, and the amount of work I do for it, it's not something that can be quantified. Like let's say if I am in a coding test, I have been asked to do any particular coding question. I can write it in a short way, I can write it in a long way, but overall, the style of me approaching that question would be similar to the other people. On the other hand, the design ideologies can be completely different and the design outcomes can be completely different while adhering to the specific brief that we have, right? I think some of you might be aware of some poster child examples of design exercise. Like let's say design a wheelchair for someone who is extremely huge. So the center of mass will be different. Based on that, let's say it might be around an extreme height or an extremely short person. So based on that, the center of mass will be different. Based on that, the way you move around the wheelchair will be very different. Or let's say some people want to design cooking gloves for people with 6 fingers, which is a very unique way. There are multiple ways you can approach these things. And another thing that happens while you are approaching any one design problem, it is very difficult to approach any other design problem as well. When you're working on one design problem, you can at most work on a second design problem, but it's not that you can work on 3 to 4 design problems, right? And these design problems will not go through, like, I mean, it won't be something you come up within hours, right? Like I can give a company test in 2 hours, but I cannot come up with a design solution in 2 hours. Of course I can, but that won't be the optimum solution. And then subsequently, if I have a 2 hour test, I can at worst give 4 tests in a day. But I cannot do four design problems in a day. That will be very impractical and not very beneficial for the company as companies as well as for the students. So based on all of these things, IDC placements work very differently. We'll be having another groundwork specifically on the IDC placements, and IDC team usually manages these placements. Now we go to the food team. So at this point, I will also implore you guys. I'm sorry. I will also implore you guys that you try to maybe see the common members within these teams. So it's not just that we just placement managers. Those are the people who decide who goes in which teams. It's not that they just do a lucky draw and who will come out in this team. It's mostly based on the competencies of people as well as the kind of coordination multiple teams require amongst themselves. So, for example, logistics and food team might have a high level of coordination amongst themselves because of requirements. Same for logistics and IDC team. Same for Skynet and mail or offer letter tracking team. Sometimes there's also a certain degree of correlation between Skynet and IDC team. So that is a little advanced. You guys are not expected to notice all of those things at this stage, but it's better if you do. So similarly, like as I said, managing logistics throughout the venue is something that logistic team does, and food, of course, is one of those subsets. So you can think of food team as a subset for the logistics team itself. So food basically is managed. If you talk in two different phases. The first is pre-December phase, which is when a lot of IPT members are working 24/7 within the placement cell. So they do not have time even to go out of the placement cell and eat something. So that is when food is managing. What? Okay, sure, I will try that. So that is in the pre-December phase. You need to manage a lot of food for these people who cannot even leave the placement cell at that point of time, given the amount of work. And then in the post December phase, once you're in December, you need to manage food for the INCs who are over there, for the ICs who are managing the placements, APCs who are managing the placements, plus the HRs. So yeah, that is something food team does. Floor planning, I believe Ajay has discussed sufficiently, right?
Yes.
All right. So
Yes,
floor
you had got a
planning,
good
I
brief
will.
of it.
Right. So floor planning is something I will skip for now. Then we have the slotting team. So slotting team, you guys are already aware what slots are. Uh, Slotting team's work is basically to look around at various parameters that might affect the company standing within the market, the company, the particular profile that companies is bringing, its standing in the market, and how much desired that particular profile is amongst the students. So all of these factors, I mean, I summed up very briefly uh, amongst these three categories of factors. But then if you break them down, there are around 19 to 20 factors that influence how slotting is done. So any company that that is perceived as more relevant will get a better slot compared to any other company. And that relevance to some extent can owe itself to the a very high CTC that the company might be willing to give. But then we have examples where companies with very low CTCs get very good slots because they have a very good standing and market reputation. Whereas
Airbus.
sometimes, yeah,
Uh, Airbus generally it gets a morning slot.
right. Airbus is a very good example. A very, very average CTC, but it usually gets a day 1.1 slot. So those kinds of companies are there. And even if you go out of CTC, in almost every one of the 20-ish parameters that are there, which we will discuss in a greater detail once we go to the groundwork of slotting. Abhay might have covered this in some detail, right?
Yes.
All right. So yeah, all right. So then you guys have a good understanding. So we'll just move ahead with slotting team also. Now we come to the offer letter tracking team. So offer letter tracking is a very important thing because let's say it is slot 2.1. So in slot, somebody already pointed out that 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. is when slot 2.1 will be happening. And after 3 p.m., there will be a 2-hour break. From 5 p.m. to 1 a.m., again, slot 2.2 will be happening. Now, preferences, students will be submitting their preferences. If they get selected, which company would they like to go in if they receive multiple offer letters? Like, sorry. Yeah, so which company would they like to go in? But as soon as the offer letter comes in, we need to get it to the placement office as soon as possible because that student needs to be taken out from the placement process also. If, for example, let's say if there's any kind of delay and let's say slot 2.2 begins, then that student will be sitting in the placement process without being aware that he's already placed. And that can also increase job losses within that particular slot, right? Because that student might be offered another offer and then he would have to decline it because he's already placed in 2.1. So offer letter tracking is something that happens as soon as the slot begins within 2 to 3 hours. Some companies will start giving their offers, and as it is the job of the offer letter tracking team that as soon as possible those offers have to be delivered to the placement office such that an interim list can be released. So those of you might not be aware of the interim list. Basically, so uh, let's say I went for slot 1.1. I had 3 interviews, right? Or let's say it's 2.1 for to make things easier, since 1.1 and 1.2 are somewhat special compared to 2.1 and rest of the slots that you guys, again, it's kind of a homework, you guys can figure out how it's special. So let's go to 2.1. I have 3 interviews and I received an offer for some of the companies. I might not be aware of how many companies I've received, and it might, given that I received an offer for let's say 2 companies, it might take a while during all of this placement process happening for the placement cell to figure out which company was my higher preference, so which company should I be placed in. But that thing should not delay me being taken out of the placement process for the slot 2.2. So an interim list is released after every slot of how many students are placed, irrespective of whichever company they are placed in. So that way I can know I am placed. Later on, I'll get to know which company, so that I do not have to sit for slot 2.2. Right. So that is also something that offer letter tracking company does. We have a question. Why don't we have CTC and branch mentioned in JAP details on placement blog? So for placement blog basically is a place where it is announced to you that this job uh, is coming or this particular profile is coming for you. Right. Once you go to the placement, you can also log in. You might be aware. Once you log into your particular placement ID, there you can register for it, and there you get to see what the particular CTC is, what the particular gross is for that particular company, and what exactly is the are the departments and the programs that are eligible to sign up for it. Right. As a student, you might not be able to see the particular profile, the particular departments that this company can sign up for, but you will be made aware if you are the one who can sign up for it or not. The department placement coordinators, then APC, IC, these people are usually made aware of whatever departments and the programs that the company has filled up the job for. and that is again one of the point of negotiations where you try to open the company for as many profiles, which is again the number of jobs, as many departments, as many programs as possible, while keeping as few resume filters or CPI filters as possible. So negotiation is something that keeps on going on and on and on. Yeah, the question is, but all of this is mentioned in the internship blog. Why don't they do this for placement blog? Because again, the number of internship companies that come, can you please tell me the number of companies that came for day one in internship? If possible, anyone can answer that question. Day one of internship. Yeah, Raveen, that is correct. Maximum to maximum 6, 7, maybe 10 companies will come for internship. And even then, it's not that there will be a day 1.1, 1.2. There will be day 1.2. Usually, sometimes even day 2 will happen, but it's not that there are 15 continuous days of placement happening. So the load of companies is much, much less in case of internships. So that kind of an information you can keep giving out. But if you do the same thing in case of in case of placements, then the amount of information on the placement blog will be unmanageable. Like after day 3, day 4, around 20 jobs will be opening all at once. Each and every one of those jobs might have their own test requirement or resume requirements. All of those things will be posted around every half an hour. So from December 2nd or 3rd until December 16th, every half an hour a post will be made. In this, if you also start adding in these details, it will become a headache. And that is something that not everyone even needs to know about. Right? If I am interested in that company, then I need to know if I can sign up for it or what are the particular criteria for signing up for it. Everyone does not need to know about it, right? Next, I hope that was fine. You understood the doubt, right?
Hi, Kshitij.
Yeah.
I had a question. Maybe it's a mistake, but for the offer letter, hectic period, you said that it starts a little later than like 1st December. Shouldn't it start from 1st December itself?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
In the slides, you've mentioned that
Yeah.
there's an orange part for the more hectic part and the yellow part for the less hectic part.
Right. So that
So
should
shouldn't-
ideally start from 1st December. That is correct.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
is that just a mistake, or is it that
Yeah,
for
that's
the
a
first 4 days
mistake.
they're so busy? Okay.
No, that's a mistake. In fact, during that time, it's somewhat more hectic given that you have 2 slots.
Right.
That's very right of you to point out. Let's go for the next question. Uh, does placement team ask the companies who pay less than average or better for these? Yeah, so literally anything that that the company comes for is negotiated by the APCs or by the CCs. One of these things is the CTC. So for CTCs plus the some companies do have bond. We try to get it removed, but some companies still come with a bond. So the duration of that bond, the CTC compared to their competitors, compared to them last year, compared to the profiles they bring in between profiles, all of these things are things that we negotiate for. I hope that was the doubt you asked, right?
Isn't that say this an year you just sort companies on based on CTC, and the next year you remove the least paying thing, and you won't ask them. Is that I think that can make the average more higher because there is no point in calling the last like you
I'm
have all the
sorry,
350
I'm
companies
unable to
or
understand
say
what
500
exactly you're trying
companies.
to say.
Say for the last year you have set of companies and their pay or whatever like metrics, so you can remove the last or the like the least one.
Okay,
That can make the
so I think
average more higher, right?
that is correct. That can make the average higher. Now, I think someone
Also,
pointed
placement
out.
rate is also low.
What?
The placement rate, the students getting placed can be affected by this. So there is a
Right.
trade-off.
That is, I mean, that is a reasonable way to think about it. But I think someone pointed out recently that as far as day 1.1 is concerned, probably Airbus is the company that comes with the least CTC. Would you really want to remove Airbus from this whole equation? Like, do you want to?
Like,
Do
how
you
is it
want Airbus to
helping
not come?
placement team?
How is it helping? So,
Like, how is
the
it helping?
slot.
I was curious.
So the reason why Airbus is placed there is amongst a lot of other things. As I said, there are 20 different factors that make up slotting. One of them is CTC. Secondly, you have the branding, that the brand value that the company has, the profile that the company brings, the location of the profile that the company brings. So because of those things, those companies, even though they might pay lesser, are actually more prestigious to work in and might offer much better exit options as compared to any company that is offering a very high CTC. So students might want to begin their career there. That is another reason.
Yeah.
Airbus itself is a core company, so it's not clashing very much with other companies. But again, as far as the lowest CTC rule is concerned, if you want to implement that, then Airbus will go, right? Irrespective of if it is a core company or not a core company, right?
Yeah.
That is also a very good point.
Thank
Job
you.
losses are prevented. Having a few core companies within every slot prevents a lot of clashing. That, let's say, if all the companies were non-core, then it would cause a lot of clashes within the shortlist, right? This would increase the job losses also. So some amount of some amount of core companies also ensure that there are exclusive shortlists such that more people are placed within a slot while there are less clashes within the shortlists. Airbus generally comes for aerospace. Yeah, right. That is also a point. So all of these points together make uh, Airbus a D1.1 company, right? It's not that just CTC is concerned. It's not that just core or non-core is concerned. All of these things are concerned altogether. I think we have one tiny last slide. After that, we can take more questions. Right. So this is another, as I said, that we would be looking after how exactly JAFs are managed. So this is a slide that shows the whole life cycle of a JAF. Do you guys want to cover it maybe, or it can also be covered at a later date? I will probably take that as a no.
Uh, can briefly and can
Right,
briefly
sure.
tell us about this.
So over here you can see that there is phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 transition. Now you can see what is the exact status of the JAF that is given out in each and every one of the phases. So obviously every company will start as a company that has not yet been contacted. Once you do data mining around that company, you figure out what is the contacts that you need to reach out to. Then you send an invitation. Once you send the invitation, you can get several kinds of responses. The company might straight up say they're not interested. In that case, already removed from the placement process. In some cases, they may say they are interested or they might be interested later, which is phase 2. So as far as we are talking about phase 1 transition, phase 2 transition, when I'm saying interested in phase 1 and phase 2, this is not those phases that I'm talking about. Placement itself happens in 2 phases, amongst which phase 1 is the one that happens usually during the odd semester, and phase 2 happens during even semester. So that is why you see that any company that is interested in phase 2, that directly goes to the phase 2, and companies that might say that they want to be contacted later or say that they are interested in phase 1, we keep following up with them and those companies come in following up. So following up means that I have a working relation within this particular company, and I am following up with them in order such that they sign up for the JAF. Once they sign up for the JAF, the company is JAF filled. Then a lot of details have to be mentioned in the JAF, which includes the CTC, it includes gross, it includes the whole salary structure of how that CTC and gross are distributed, where exactly will I be placed if I go for that company, what is the job description, which departments the company opens for, what kind will bonus jobs be allowed. If you guys have not discussed bonus jobs yet, again, that's a homework that you guys can go for, what exactly are bonus jobs and how incentive points might affect them. So that is all of those things are mentioned within the JAF. Once all of this information has been verified, like I can see that this information is correct and the company has made the registration payment, then I go to the executive officer and tell them, okay, this thing has been done. I think you can verify it. The executive officer, who is one of the administrative staff, they verify the information on their own, and if they find it worthy, they will verify it. Once the JAF has been verified, then the JAF can be opened. Usually, you have to confer with the JAF follow-up team when any JAF has to be opened. And once the JAF has been opened for 3 to 4 days, again, that can be conferred with the JAF follow-up team for how long and when it has to be opened based on how other JAFs of similar profiles are opening. Then the JAF is closed. So, phase one transition usually is of JAF filled and JAF verified companies. JAF closed companies will technically come in that category, but we never have JAF closed companies in the middle of October. Then phase two transition is following up companies, and phase three is all of the remaining companies. So yeah, that's mostly what we have for the groundwork. Let's just go with the placement season. Any doubts that you guys had? Why do we have 4 companies on first 4 days? Um, okay, I just have a counter question to that. Why should we not have 4 companies on the first 4 days? Is there any reason to exclude them as such? Instead, it's better. That is one way to go. Like you guys can maybe, given that groundwork is done, maybe those who are sick and tired of the groundwork, they can leave. If you want, rest of us can maybe even have a discussion at this point. You guys can unmute if you want. Like you don't need to type it in the chat box.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a small query actually. Uh, if a student misses their slot during the placements, what will happen then? And would the student be allotted a new slot for the same company, or will he literally be not, he or she will not allowed to apply for that company? What will happen exactly?
So usually, if a student cannot appear within a particular slot, that's usually because the student might have an interview in another slot and that company schedule is trailing. So in that case, we try to reschedule the student. Maybe like we can have someone who was supposed to go after him, they can go before him. Right. So that is the amount of teeny tiny tweaking that is expected from ICs and APCs who are managing the companies in Skynet schedule.
And
Right.
if the reason is not something related to the placements itself, if there is an health issue or something along those lines, then what would happen?
It depends on how major it is. We try our best to get that schedule, that get that interview to the student, so that they get the best chance to get placed. Right. But if they absolutely cannot come, or if an online interview is not possible, then